Hey, what's up? I'm just going to real quick answer some comments on a video that I posted just because it appears that this guy, Bill Burns 2, has some followers. More of this is just pointing out different types of logical fallacies and argument fallacies because some of them are just really funny to me. So I'm just going to point to it real quick on the page. Okay. So there's an individual here who, his name is, I guess you could say, N. Janovic, 1980. I don't know if that's when that person was born. But he says, I actually feel a bit sorry for you. You have the same glazed look on your face that I see on the face of Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons who come knocking on my door. Of course, it's an ad hominem attack. That means that he's personally attacking me instead of attacking any sort of argument I have. And I decided that this would be really funny to comment on because he has some scientific basis for what he's talking about. What he's probably inferring by saying I look like I have the look of the Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, based on my having lived next to a Mormon church, is he's probably saying I have a baby face and light eyes because a lot of the Mormons who I've encountered are usually blonde hair, blue eyes, or light eyes. They have very baby faces when they go on the missions because they have the white t-shirts, black ties because they're usually in their late teens, early 20s when they're doing this type of thing. So I can see where you're coming from when you're saying you look like you have a glazed face. What you're really saying is that I have a baby face, and that looks like a lot of the Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons who are doing their missions. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you made that observation. I'm glad I can help correct your thinking on that. So going to some of the other, things that pointing out here, they made this kind of argument saying, in an analogy that I was making a correlation with my history, talking about government regulation and the boom. And this is something that you have to really do your research on, and I'll just give you a short summary of the history. You'll have to do your own research because it's going to take a lot of time. The short of it is that during the early 1800s, it's when you had a lot of the massive exploration of natural resources, and during this time, that's when we started to have corporations forming in America. There's a time in America when corporations were actually approved by the government to serve some sort of public good. That, of course, changed over the years. So you had the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, steel, oil, and other big industries, tobacco in the South, cotton. All these industries started to grow up, and eventually people who owned these companies got into positions of influence. They used their influence and affluence to buy up lots of different trust funds, schools, and things like that. And what they did is they largely took over all of the academic institutions through grant monies and other philanthropic endeavors. So that's why you have like the Carnegie Institute and all these different Rockefeller foundations, giving people grants to study. Really what they always were doing is they were giving money to people who were already lined up with their ideology. That is, competition is a sin, putting down other small businesses, adding regulation, increasing international globalism, all for corporate interests. And this is something you're going to have to do your research on your own for. Government regulation inherently is actually about providing stability. So you might be right about that. But the stability that they're trying to provide is actually to keep big businesses in control because they're the only people who can afford to have a series of attorneys and accountants and things like that with which to run their business and also to be able to pay the taxes on it to follow the regulatory compliance through the tax codes. Some 17,000 plus pages. It's not easy to follow. And it takes a lot of money to follow. And small businesses, if you were to actually take a look at how most people follow the tax code and other regulatory codes, they really don't follow it. And if they get caught, they pretty much get sunk under. So that's the whole concept of the stunted market, is that during the early 1800s, up to the mid-1800s, there was a lot of growth. There wasn't much regulation. There wasn't really any taxation. The U.S. government actually got most of their money from selling land, after the Louisiana Purchase, and also through taxes on imports from foreign nations. And this allowed for great growth. And so we had the wheels of America going. And eventually, as the regulation came down, what happened is we had the big businesses in control using patents and things like that to suppress information technology, keep their corporations propped up. And that's why you see a lot of the big corporations have been around for over 100 years. It's basically creating a stable system for big business. And that's what libertarians to anarchists, we find to be repulsive, is that they create their monopolies by using the government's force. In other words, taxes which are collected at the threat of a gun. If you don't pay your taxes, they're going to keep sending you bills, and eventually they'll send armed agents to take your property from you, whether it's your house or your business, and they'll throw you in jail. And if you resist, eventually could lead to death because they'll taser you or shoot you if you resist, depending on which level you would, use to resist. So that money is then taken, and it's given then in grants and subsidies to other businesses, certain tax credits. Orville Redenbacher had a freaking popcorn, a tax subsidy given to them as well. And actually, many different people are paid money in certain states by the government to not produce things, to not raise farm animals and stuff like that. It's just a totally backwards system. And that's the problem with government is they just want to control and manipulate the economy, and it never works out because it can't keep up with people's demands, like small business can. Let's see if there's anything real quick. I didn't see anything that was that great as far as discussions. There was something. He says this one thing, which I don't even know what the joke really is. It says, someone's told me this joke, how many libertarians take shapes like none the dark books will convey itself in the way. It's like, it's not even a good joke. It has no logical correlation to anything that libertarianism is. Because libertarianism basically says that free people make contractual agreements with each other, much like historical tradesmen did with guilds and trading on the seas. It was called common law, and merchants would abide by this and would elect to go to arbitration. If you didn't submit to these things, you were blackballed. That's how the markets worked. But this, to change a light bulb, the darkest way stuff to go away. What you're suggesting, and let me just announce a principle for you, since you're not, instead of actually drawing out an actual principle, you're just making these analogies and idioms which just, they're not logical, nor do they really expound what you're trying to say. Here's my guess as to what you're trying to say. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're trying to say that libertarians just think that the evils of the world and the evils of man are just going to disappear if the market takes over. And that's not a single libertarian anarchist thinks that. Mankind is naturally wicked. What we think is that the government, which lives on a dichotomy of being conflicting, in other words, they say theft is wrong, yet they tax the barrel of a gun. That's, antithetical to have a law that says it's wrong for you to do one thing, but it's not wrong for us to do one thing. They can use eminent domain to take people's property for a quote-unquote public purpose, but you can't take somebody else's property. They live off of a double standard. And libertarians say that this double standard really spoils the nature of man, because this monopolized force essentially controls all the sectors of social life and economy through theft, and then keeps other people down from being able to bring up new ideas because of the double standard on which they live. And the fact of the matter is, we just want to live under one standard. That standard is theft is wrong. You can't force somebody to accept your service. They have to voluntarily exchange for it. So that's just a little summary of everything, and I really appreciate your comments because it allows me to, highlight different questions and, fallacies and, things that, focus it here, that people have here. But I guess I'll have to talk to y'all later, and take care.